What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Hot Take. Today we're in a 2000 Honda Prelude. So many of you commented on the original Honda video we did. Why is there no Prelude? The Prelude was at the shop at the time, but now we have it. 2000 Honda Prelude. We have the H22 series engine, makes 200 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque. It's a 2.2 liter inline 4. This is sort of the big block of the Honda world, when at the time the Civic had an itty-bitty little 1.6. The Prelude was sort of Honda's grand sports coupe, and it was their car they sort of tried new technologies on. A little bit of an oddball, but this one is in very nice condition with just over 100,000 miles. I'm super excited to take it out on the road today. So let's go see how she rips. Classic Honda fashion. The manual gear shifter feels awesome. Some initial impressions. I'm going to compare this to the EM1 Civic Si really quick. It's already a little louder than the EM1 Civic Si. I can hear more engine noise, which makes sense. This is supposed to be a little more sporty. When you flat foot it, you can definitely hear there's just a little bit more induction noise there, although it is still pretty quiet. It's very easy to drive, typical Honda fashion. The suspension is very soft on this car. It absorbs a lot of these bumps really nicely. The flywheel feels very light when you go for downshifts. You don't have to give it a lot on the gas blip. Suspension feels very composed. These are all pretty normal Honda things. Now this is not a Type SH. The Type SH would have cost a little more when it was new, and it had a couple of minor differences, but the largest difference was the differential up front in the Type SH, whereas this has a normal style open diff that had, I don't know if it was an LSD, but some sort of traction system to put the power down better, reduce wheel spin, torque steer, all that good stuff. But while this does not have it, to be honest, I don't think we'll really need it all that much. I've tended to find that a lot of those things really only impact cars when they're at the limit or on track, or if you do any hard launches, then you'd probably notice it. Try some torque here. It is very quiet. I like that though. We have an 8,000 RPM red line, which is of course awesome. Definitely more torque at 4,000 than there is in the EM1 Civic Si, and frankly I would say maybe even the Integra as well. So this engine is an H series motor, which is completely different than any of the other engines that were put in any of the other Honda, I guess I'll call them sports cars. And I think the idea with the H series is it was just supposed to have more torque across the power band. So VTEC kickover is at 5,500 RPM, and it's a pretty hard kickover. The car gets way faster once you hit VTEC. That's funny. It's pretty noticeable too in the B series engines, but I feel like even more so in this. I feel like there's a pretty noticeable surge right at 5,500. Very tall gearing. I love the sound it makes. It sounds a lot throatier than a lot of the smaller engines. A little nose divey when you're on the brake. Just a little more engine heavy than the other Hondas. It feels more special than the Civic Si, for sure. The seats have more bolstering. I feel like the whole interior kind of feels a little more, I don't even want to say high-end because the materials are very similar, but it feels sportier. The roof line's really low. You have a sunroof right here, or a moonroof. I always mix them up. I can never figure out the difference. Body roll. It's funny, this car is not that large, but it drives like a larger sports coupe. It's like usually a lot of big cars try to appear smaller. This is sort of a small car trying to feel larger than it is. Very tall gearing. Kind of sort of adding to that feeling like it's larger than it is sports coupe general vibe. Not quite as long as the NSX, but relative to the engine that we have in here, the gearing does feel pretty long. Now it's very interesting. Usually Honda has short gearing and a small engine that revs really high, but this sort of has kind of a mix, a blend of a lot of different aspect. That was the Prelude. The Prelude wasn't your normal Honda. The Prelude was something different. Feels a little more luxury-esque in its driving experience. Third gear's tall, you wind it out. Little throttle stumble when changing between gears. It's an old car. They do these things. I love it. I love that. The engine is so emotional. I don't really know how to describe it. It feels maybe a little smoother than the other engines. Maybe the noise will sort of translate onto video, but it sounds a particular way and I really like it. Also, something I really like about this engine is it has actual torque down low. Put my foot down. I'm actually gaining speed. That is not the case in the B16 or the B18. Now figuring out what that noise is. It's a more pronounced exhaust note. So the Civic and the Integra are both very quiet, and honestly they're a little more induction noise heavy. This has a more even balance between intake and exhaust. Even though it's a completely stock exhaust, you can sort of hear it from the factory. I do another blip. I mean, it is still very quiet. It is a factory exhaust from, whatever, 24 years ago. Being this is a 2000, but it has just a nice little tone to it. I mean, this is really all they would ever give you back in those days. If you want anything more, you had to go to the aftermarket, but I like the way this car sounds. It's pretty tame, but when you open it up, it's got some emotion, some of that rawness in it, and that's what old Hondas are known for. Sort of continuing the theme, if you watch any other Honda videos, that they've all had. They all have a lot of emotion, a lot of character, and they all make you want to drive them. It's all repaved now. Wow, nice. Speaking of driving a Honda, we have some more twisties. For how much nosedive this thing has when you get on the brakes, there's not a lot of body roll. And maybe it's just some weird dampening they did between the sway bars and the control arms and the shocks to sort of create that effect. But if I sort of tap the brake, you instantly see the front end go down. But when you're kind of taking it in a turn, it doesn't seem to really, it doesn't behave in the same way. It does roll a little bit, but it's pretty linear with the motion that you're making the car do. I was sort of expecting my Camry sort of level, not quite as bad, but kind of similar-ish, and then it was just really rolly, but not at all. It's pretty composed. The search for VTEC. What is plenty of grip. It's a little damp out today, so I've sort of been taking it a little bit easier, trying to not lose traction, but I was definitely underestimating the amount of grip this car has. So despite not having the Type SH differential, realistically, I don't think you're going to notice that on the road. I'd love to drive one and make that comparison, but I don't know. This seems plenty fine on the street, even in sort of not optimal conditions. I haven't gotten any wheel spin or anything yet, and I haven't noticed that much torque steer. Certainly a lot less than the Integra Type R. Took off on a rougher patch of pavement there, still tons of grip. I'm going to throw up on screen the tire size that we have on here, but I think that might be a large contributing factor because the tires, they don't just free spin. It's a lot different from the other four-cylinder Hondas. Honda somehow managed to make a bunch of four-cylinder sports cars that are all 2 doors and make them all feel different. And this one's no exception. It's not as weird and quirky as the older Preludes with 4-wheel steering and weird looking interiors. Even in its final form, its last breath, 2000, the last model year was 01, it still has its own character, its own flavor. It's sort of an entry-level Grand Tourer coupe as opposed to a sports coupe. Okay, we gotta do one more. Wait for an even patch of road. We finished our test drive of the 2000 Honda Prelude. I think we covered it pretty well in this video, but it is sort of the oddball Honda coupe, and it was a great driving experience. It feels a lot different from all the other Hondas while still retaining a lot of that similar Honda character. With all the inputs, the shifter, the pedal fields, all classic Honda. They kept all the great things and just kind of changed it up a bit. The owner tells me this one is going to be for sale. When it goes for sale, I'll throw a link down in the description below. So if you'd like to own this awesome Prelude, you can. But with that, let's go ahead and give the Honda Prelude a score. The score is as shown. It scores a little lower than some of the other 4-cylinder Hondas we recently drove. It's a fun coupe with an interesting driving experience, but out of all of the 4-cylinder Hondas, it has slightly worse fuel economy and doesn't offer as much extra on paper. Should you buy it? The 5th generation Honda Prelude is a weird car. It's a 4-cylinder coupe trying to imitate a V8 luxury coupe. It's not quite as responsive as a Honda sports car, but it's not as dull as a full-fledged luxury coupe. The Prelude used to be Honda's proving grounds for new technology they could put into their other cars, but by this point there wasn't much left for the Prelude to go. That said, even in its final years, the Prelude had a distinguished driving experience from the other Hondas, and in today's world of dead-feeling luxury coupes, this has a lot of character and playfulness we love from Hondas. A car doesn't always need to have a purpose or reinvent the wheel. Honda wanted to create a different driving experience, and the Prelude is the product of their vision.